introductory talk. I should have a question mark on that. It's not like I know the answer to the next phase, so it should be AI and the next phase, question mark. I don't know the answers for sure. But I have been looking at this for a very long time. I am that old. I have been doing this for about 30 years. And it's really interesting watching what's happening and reflecting back on all of that time. So I've written a couple of books. I'm Professor Emerita now at University College London, and I run a small business. And I also have various other roles, including sitting on the Scientific Advisory Council for the Department for Education, who are obviously also very concerned about what's happening with AI. So today, we are going to do a quick skirt around what's happening. Anthony's done a fantastic job and said much of what I'm going to say, which means I can cut through a lot of my slides very quickly, which is brilliant. Of course, I'm going to say something about human intelligence, because that's what really matters. And I'm going to say something about superintelligence, and then I'm going to give you some strategic tools to go away and use. Now, I always have way too many slides. You won't be able to read them all. The point is that my role is to help you navigate it as a resource afterwards, because there are templates in there, there's a strategic framework, some practical tools to help you. You've also got Chris coming, Laura coming, Dan coming, Paddy coming, all of whom will give you lots of great tools to use. So hopefully you'll find these useful. So AI, yeah, we all know this, technology that analyzes its environment and acts with some degree of autonomy to achieve goals. That definition fits every single machine learning AI application out there. From self-driving cars to ChatGPT to Claude to my favorite, my speech-to-text on my phone, analyzes the environment of my spoken words. It has been trained to understand the relationship, no, to know the relationship, not to understand, to know the relationship between spoken words and characters on a screen. It's been trained to know that there's punctuation, spaces, sentences, paragraphs. It achieves the goal of translating what I speak into characters, words, sentences on the screen. That definition embraces all of our machine learning artificial intelligence, and it's really useful to remember that. It's also super important to remember it's not new. It's been around for decades and decades. Right back in the middle of the last century, we were talking about artificial intelligence. Just because ChatGPT only arrived in 2022 was not the birth of artificial intelligence. And it's really important to remember this, because just like all powerful inventions, from the wheel to the printing press to the internet, it took a long time to get there. And the history really matters. But the future is uncertain, although personally I don't believe artificial general intelligence is anywhere near whatever Elon Musk says. But what happened in 2022 was really interesting, because it was the first time that people en masse had a very sophisticated piece of technology in their hands for free, to an extent, obviously, free being a loaded term there. And of course, it's interesting because ChatGPT reached 100 million users in 2 months. The nearest comparison is Netflix, and it took more than 10 years. So it had a huge impact. The technology itself isn't that new. The transformer architecture that's behind ChatGPT was around in 2017. In fact, the seminal paper that was published in 2017. So it's not that the technology itself was that new. It's that it was made freely available at scale, and it was incredibly easy to use. But it's not the whole story, and I think actually there's too much focus on generative AI at the moment, because there are many other forms of artificial intelligence that are actually much, much more powerful. I was listening to Radio 4, as I usually do in the morning, and there was an item on this morning about stroke patients, being able to identify stroke patients much more quickly because of pattern matching. That's machine learning, but it's not generative AI. Generative AI is machine learning, but it's a particular sort of machine learning. But that kind of data analytics work is super powerful and super useful. So we need to recognize, as Anthony's already said, AI is not going anywhere. Yes, of course it's going to transform things. We don't know how it's going to transform them. And people sometimes get grumpy with me over this slide, because it looks like I'm just downing on our big tech bros in Silicon Valley and saying they're bad people. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I am saying is we mustn't shut our eyes to the fact that this is all about money. What happened in November 2022 was The large technology companies realized how they could make a lot of money out of AI, how they could make it a consumer product. That's what really happened. And so whilst there may be some amazing things that happen for the benefit of humanity, we mustn't hide from the fact that it is a commercial enterprise. These are commercial companies and they are out to make a profit. Now I find this very interesting. I'm used to standing still, so I apologize for the fact that I will move about. So this is from 22nd of August this year. Now, I'm not a financial analyst. I would never pretend to be. But I do think it's really interesting. So this is the S&P 500. So this is the one of the financial indexes. There's more than one in the US. And you can see the red is basically the Magnificent Seven, as we call them, the big technology and comms company. Now, first of all, you can see how much of the S&P 500, this is on capitalization value, those companies have. But also what's interesting is looking at these charts here, showing the change from 2000 to 2025. Now this one obviously is particularly interesting because we record the dot-com bubble there in 2000. And part of the slide's point is to show we're heading in that direction. Now I don't actually think we're moving into an AI bubble. I do think the disappointment of ChatGPT 5 wasn't surprising, and hey, guess what? It is getting to its limits. But there will be other things coming along. It may die off, but I don't see it having the complete collapse that happened with the dot-com bubble. But it is really interesting when you look at exactly how big these companies are. They are larger than small countries, and they are extraordinarily powerful. And this is what is driving what's happening in AI. And that can be scary, and it can make us feel disempowered. As Anthony was saying, we can feel like we're losing agency. But I think we can have a voice in all of this. We just have to go into it with our eyes open. So a lot of what I want to do later in this talk is give you some tools to help you navigate. But I also want to give you some thought tools as you start conceptualizing, or you can continue conceptualizing, because I know you're all thinking about this already. So yes, the landscape's changing very quickly. And a lot of it is driven by two things. Those big technology companies, and by politics. Of course it is. The beautiful bill out there in the US, and the big AI bill, has made a huge impact on the way that AI is being regulated or not being regulated. Gavin Newsom in California tried really hard to get legislation through at the end of last year, but in the end had to back down. And we are seeing some complications in the regulatory space because of politics, to be blunt. So we have the EU AI Act, which is the kind of strongest version that's relevant to us of regulation in AI. And it'll be interesting to see how we now chart the future regulatory landscape. And I think we have to be very aware that it's not just the technology that's changing quickly, it's also that regulatory, that geopolitical, that technology space, and that's changing very quickly. But three things are super important. And by the way, if you watch my LinkedIn and you follow the link you'll get tomorrow, you'll see a different version of the perfect storm. So there's a perfect storm that's got us here, and it's really helpful to understand the perfect storm, because it's the heart of understanding machine learning. So it's a perfect storm of three elements, and if you haven't got all three of them, you haven't got machine learning AI. Data, algorithms, processing power. And it's only because those three things have come together in the right proportions at the same time that we have the sophisticated AI that we have. So data, there's so much data about us, isn't there, out there in the world. Make a train journey, put your ticket in the barrier, get out at the other end, you're tracked. Buy something online, you're tracked. Cameras everywhere. We have more CCTV footage in the UK than anywhere else. We're tracked all the time. There's vast amounts of data being collected about us all the time. Data feeds machine learning AI. When I talked about my speech to text, I said it's been trained on millions of examples. Those examples are data, because machine learning learns from data. And so data is a fundamental component. Processing power. My humble little mobile phone here, and it's a really old one, it's an Apple 12, terribly out of date, but it still has more processing power than the department had when I first started studying computer science and AI back in the 90s. Processing power is what means that we can process that data and learn from that data. And the algorithms, well, they're what brings together the processing power and the data. And the algorithms, of course, make a difference. You can have better algorithms, worse algorithms. You can have better quality data, worse quality data. And that will impact on the quality of the AI. So going back to that speech-to-text example, if the speech-to-text AI has only been trained on examples of English, it will only be able to work in English. Do you see what I mean? So the extent to which the data is representative of the population who want to use the AI makes a difference to the quality of the AI. Similarly, if the algorithm is not a good algorithm, if it's not effective, it won't process that data effectively. So those three ingredients are super important. Now, Anthony's been through much of this, so I'm going to skip through these very quickly. As I say, you'll get a copy, so please have a look. But we know, I'm sure you all know, there are huge potential advantages to AI. We just need to understand exactly how to use them best. And yes, there are a lot of risks. Anthony's been through those. Personally, I think the biggest risk is over-reliance on AI. And I'll say a bit more about that later. Because it's so tempting, isn't it? And I think it's particularly tempting for young people. Because it's there, it's ready, it can help you 24/7. Or it believes it can help you. Pretends it can help you. And sometimes it can. The importance of being human. This is what really, really matters. Again, Anthony's already said quite a bit about this. But I find it useful to think about AI in education through these three lenses. I think it can help cut the complexity. Because let's face it, it's a really noisy space. There's never a day without multiple headlines about AI. I think it's a competition between AI and Trump. Probably Trump wins at the moment, but it's a close run thing. There's a lot happening around AI, so it can feel noisy, complex, difficult to navigate. So I find these three lenses quite useful. So yeah, we can see AI as a tool, something useful we can use, my speech-to-text, for example. We can think about it as something we need to learn about, because we do. We need to understand AI, we need to know how to use it, but beyond that we need to know something about the way it works in order to really use it effectively and safely. But really, this is what matters the most. Because there are a few things I'm sure about at the moment. I really am unsure about how this is going to play out. But one thing I am sure about is that now we have to be far more intelligent. The consumerization of AI is leading to rhetoric that suggests, particularly to young people, that it's going to make their lives easier. Absolutely not. Now we need to work much harder intellectually so that we are much more intelligent. We've now got these smart tools to help us, so we need to get to the next level of intelligence. You know, our intelligence is not a finished work. We haven't finished evolving. We will keep evolving, and we can be ever more intelligent, and this is a moment when we have to make a step change in that intelligence. Now, it's really important, and again, this reflects a lot of what Anthony was saying as well, to understand the difference between machine, artificial intelligence, and human intelligence. They really are different. Yes, AI has been created in our image. How else could we have created it? We only understand intelligence through ourselves, if you see what I mean. If you could think about 1956 was when the Dartmouth College Conference took place in the US. 12 scientists got together and they were discussing the extent to which they could identify and specify all the details of every thinking process that we are able to conduct as humans so that they could automate them. It sounds crazy, but that's how we were thinking about AI at that time. But it's always been framed on our own intelligence. So of course it mimics our own intelligence, even if it works differently. But we are different. And Anthony has already said quite a lot about that. So I'm going to focus a bit more on how we learn differently. So we all learn through experience. You know, as humans, initially when we're first born, our experience is very tactile. It's about smell, it's about touch, it's about getting food, it's about getting human comfort. And then as we grow, we're still very much the lived experience of learning to be intelligent, to learning to walk, to learning to love, to learning to engage, to socialize, to speak. And then as we enter the formal education system, we move into a space where our learning is perhaps more mediated. We may not directly be able to experience a volcano, but we'll learn about it. Hopefully we won't experience directly what might happen with a volcano, but we can learn about it, if you see what I mean. Now, AI only gets the second bit. In the main, yeah, there are robots with sensors, but they're not anywhere near us in terms of that multi-sensory experience feeding into our intelligence. So we have an experience that includes that direct experience of being part of the world, interacting with people, interacting with the world, that AI simply doesn't have. So when I say that my speech-to-text AI learns from experience, it learns from the data examples it's offered that tell it the relationship between spoken words and written words. You can see how narrow that experience is. So often when our generative AI systems make corking mistakes, we shouldn't really be surprised, because they have none of the tacit knowledge that we have. They have none of that direct physical experience of the world. So they learn differently, and that's important to remember as well. Now, right back in 2017, I wrote this book, and it's out of copyright. I haven't done a second edition. You can download it for free from the link on the slide. And back in 2017, I was concerned that we were overestimating our AI and underestimating our human intelligence. And I still feel that way. In fact, I feel, and I am working now on a different version of the book, not a second edition, a different version of the book, much of which is focusing on the lived experience of being intelligent. Now, in a minute, I can't give you the entire book. But basically, what I looked at was how can we talk about our human intelligence in a way that really differentiates it from AI. Now, this is, 2017. It's quite a long time ago. AI's moved on. But it's still the case that we have a much richer intelligence than our AI peers. Much of the problem is that we don't treasure a lot of it because we don't measure most of it. So we have a rich repertoire of intelligence that, yes, includes the kind of academic intelligence that a lot of our school systems focus on. It includes meta-knowing, and I don't mean by that metacognition, I mean epistemic cognition, knowing what knowledge is, knowing what we should believe to be true or not. And this is ever more important in an AI world, so we need to focus more on that. Social intelligence. I'm a Vygotskian at heart. My PhD was about an AI system to represent the zone of proximal development. Of course, I believe social intelligence is fundamental to being human. It's how we learn, through interacting socially. And then we have a range of meta-intelligences. We are able to reflect on our own cognition. We are able to reflect on our own emotional intelligence. We are able to reflect on our own physical position in the world. We move about the world, physical and digital, relatively seamlessly. That requires vast amounts of intelligence that we never measure, and I don't think we treasure. AI cannot do this yet, and I'm not sure that yet is even a word that should be included there. And if we get it right, we get this really accurate perceived self-efficacy. But of course, these things don't happen by accident. We're capable of them, but education can really help enhance these, build these, strengthen these. And that's exactly what we need it to do. So we are ever more intelligent. So crudely, we can do the orange and the blue. AI excels at the blue, struggles with the orange. So, we can still excel in that space. So no, superintelligence is not Mark Zuckerberg's lab out in Silicon Valley. Please don't let that be the future. Superintelligence is us, but we have to be more intelligent. We have to use these technologies to make us more intelligent. That is the secret of cracking the problem that we are facing with AI, is to recognize that it's about using it to make us more intelligent. So how can we use AI to boost metacognition in our students? How can we use AI to boost critical thinking in our students is a great place to start, because we must beware of over-reliance. We know from history, we know what's happened to our memories. We know what's happened to our abilities to navigate in the world because of different technologies. So we must be careful that we don't over-rely on these AI technologies and allow them to do things that actually they're not particularly good at, because if we stop doing them, we'll stop being able to do them. And we stop being able to do them much faster than we had previously thought. So it's really important. And I'll say a little bit more about that Lee research in a moment. So I love Severance. Does anybody else watch Severance? Am I alert? Oh no, a few hands go up. So Severance is Apple TV Plus. I find TV a great way to relax. So I'll often come in an evening when I've finished work and try and watch something that really engages me, takes me out of my busy mind. And Severance is wonderful for that, although it's quite scary in a way. So it's about extreme work-life separation. So we have Mark here in this image, and he has an innie and an outie. His innie goes to work, and his outie is what happens when he's not at work. And the two don't talk to each other because he's had a particular procedure in the brain that has created two consciousnesses. Consciousnesses. You know what I mean. Anyway, so he's been severed. Now, what's worrying me is that we might, by over-relying on our AI, inadvertently stop connecting to our real human selves and get over-reliant on these technologies. And I just think we need to be aware of that. If we look at some of the data, we can see a decline in our reasoning and problem-solving capabilities as humans, and that's based on OECD data. 25% of adults in high-income countries struggle with basic numeracy. So we need to think about active learning and recognize the challenges. Then we have the problems around brain health. So brain health is that brain capital, that function of brain health, capacity, skills is under pressure. We see increasing rates of depression. So we know our attention is being squeezed. We know we're constantly being distracted by our technologies, increasing screen time, fragmentation, and it's not good for our brains. And then we look at what's happening in our universities, our students. The latest HEPI survey showed 92% of students. Now, obviously, it's not, they don't survey every student, but it's a representative sample. And I think we all know students are using AI. It's not a surprise. But of course, an example there, Cambridge University tested students about their use of AI, and of course, what we found was actually they weren't really applying critical thinking. They weren't really restructuring the arguments. And then we see in the workplace, research by Lee et al. Done, looking at 319 knowledge workers. And again, you see this problem, reduced effort, reduced critical thinking, over-reliance. If they're overconfident in the AI, it's bad for their own critical thinking. And we need to reflect carefully on this. Another meta-analysis by Vaccaro et al. Again shows that actually you have to design the collaboration between AI and humans to get the best results. It's not going to happen just by accident. You have to do the design. You have to create the right conditions for the AI-human collaboration to be effective. And here we see decision-making tasks show performance issues when combining human and AI. Content creation, less so. So how do we create those right conditions? Well, I think we have to recognize, as I've said, that what's happening is a catalytic moment. And the catalytic moment is about us becoming more intelligent. But the wonderful thing is, of course, that the AI can help us to be more intelligent. And this is where data is super important. So I said earlier that I thought we were focusing too much on generative AI. And actually, machine learning AI, more traditionally, can be super helpful. I gave the example of the stroke diagnostic this morning on the radio. So if we take a complex concept like metacognition, that as educators we know is fundamental to learning, we can break it down in this way. We could break it down into smaller components. We also know, and this is one of those slides you'll have to look at later because there's far too much text for you to read, but basically it's giving you some data proxies for metacognitive activities. Now, I'm not saying that you can say, oh, look, there's metacognition in that data point. What I am saying is that if you combine a rich set of data points and look for patterns in data, yes, you can spot metacognitive capability. Yes, you can spot the extent to which students are increasing their ability to engage in sophisticated metacognition. And we can build that into what we do quite simply. So here's a very simple thing that you'll recognize easily. You know, teacher sets tasks for student. Student attempts tasks. AI prompts student to reflect. Student reattempts task. Data collection points. Data collection points are super important. And then we collect all these data points together, we can start using machine learning AI to take it through a sequence of refinement, filtering, refinement, processing, so that we can start to get some very great insights. So this is a slide, again, you won't be able to read, but I'll tell you what it is. And there's a link to the paper that you can read about this, about a piece of work we did with Arizona State University students, where we were given basically, here's a set of data we've already analysed. Now you go away and use AI and tell us something we weren't able to find out using our traditional analytical methods. And that was, can you tell us if students are learning to learn as well as learning their subjects? And the short answer is yes. And the results are very interesting. And you can see from this kind of data analysis exactly where you can make interjections in the student's journey to increase the opportunity for them to learn how to learn, as well as to learn their subject area. So right, in the final 5 minutes, it is a bit of a whistle-stop tour, isn't it? Sorry, my talks are always full of information, and I hope you will look at the slides afterwards. I want to go through a strategic framework that you can use to engage with AI. Whoever you are, whatever the size of the organisation you work in, here's a strategic approach to engaging with AI. So start with your vision. Explore your vision. Your vision might be completely fine as it is, but maybe you can achieve it faster. Maybe you can achieve it for more people. Maybe you can achieve it with more impact. But think about whether your vision is AI ready. Then, governance and ethics. Supremely important. Set the parameters within which you are happy for people to use AI in your organization, and the ways in which you're not happy for them to use it, and give them some support. But look, these arrows come in, because it's really important that whilst I will present these as 4 dimensions, each of which is centered on the vision, they're not mutually exclusive. They're highly interconnected, and it's when you get the interconnections right that you really get the impact. So here's, you can look at this afterwards, a QR code that will take you to a free guide to creating your policy. You also have these things from AI in education that Anthony mentioned, and many others. So it's really important to get a policy in place. Second one, iterative unit applications. How are you actually going to use the AI? And it should be in a purpose-driven way. Don't focus on the tool. Focus on what you want the tool to achieve for you, for your students, for yourselves. And make sure that you collect enough evidence about whether this is actually achieving benefit. And here's a template that can help you do that. This can help you think through the questions you need to ask yourself as you're making a decision about what you're going to do with AI. Who's it going to benefit? What are the practical steps? What's the purpose? That's super important. Staff capability. Won't get anywhere without everybody understanding enough about AI to use it effectively. And of course, that's fundamentally connected to all of this, but in particular, those use cases. Every use case is an opportunity to empower staff. And safeguarding, as I've already said, is a key part of what needs to be in place before we get going on that AI journey. And you can click on that code to find something about the safeguarding training we can offer. Technology and data. I've said a lot about data already, and it is supremely important. You can think of this framework as having these two as the infrastructure, the human and the technology infrastructure that needs to be in place if you're going to get the best from AI, if you're really going to achieve that vision. And so think about the data that I've talked about. Think about the model. Think about the data that's being collected. There's lots of data collected in schools, but we don't always pull it together to best advantage. It's not unusual across many businesses, by the way, but I think we could do a lot more with traditional machine learning to find patterns, to see how exactly we can boost those sophisticated learning skills we know our students need. And as I say, the arrows are super important because it's not mutually exclusive. What we see at the moment is a lot of this: personal productivity, individuals learning how to use the tools effectively, which is great. You know, they feel more productive. Hopefully they're enjoying it. They're using them safely and effective. Great. What we want is more of this and more of this. So this is process productivity, where you have multiple people engaged in the use of an AI, and it's supporting a process that involves multiple individuals. It's not just An individual, it's process level productivity. And of course, the dream is system level, where you get each element of what's happening in an organization connected together through effective use of technologies. Now, all of that is a little bit far away, but actually, if you start with the framework, you can build towards that system level productivity with AI much more quickly, because it's inherent in the process is the connection between the 4 dimensions. But don't do it alone, is my message to you. It's a hard journey to get right, so do it with others. So please join the Shape the Future Coalition. So the Shape the Future Coalition is a coalition for any school leader in the UK. We have international members, but we can't actively support them because we're only have the resources to support people based in the UK. It's free to join, anybody can join, and it's a network, it's where you can come to learning lunches, learn together, but on the 17th of September, we're launching in the House of Lords 7 research projects, or 7 research themes, not projects, research themes, which are being led by members of the coalition, and any school can decide they want to join one of those research themes, and we will support that research. We will help with data analysis, we'll provide some research support, because something that's very missing in our space at the moment is really good evidence about what really works when we use these tools. So these 7 research themes will provide some evidence about what's actually happening. We're also working with King's College London to look at data stewardship, because my instincts are telling me that in a little while that is going to be something that's going nah, 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 because we are not clear about data rights and data stewardship. So as part of this, we're also working with King's College London and their data project to try and help leaders understand exactly what's happening in that data stewardship space. And when I talk about data stewardship, I'm talking about people's rights. At the moment, there's a lot of confusion about rights to data, rights to how data should be used. For example, we've seen discussions already about when a student writes an essay, whose IP is that? Who has the rights to that data? So we're using data stewardship as a cross-cutting theme across all those 7 strands. But please, if you'd like to know more, just join. As I say, it's free. And even if you think, oh, I haven't got time to do all of that, just come along to a learning lunch and meet other people who are facing the same challenges as all of you. So, my motto, learn fast, act more slowly, because it's all about learning to make sure we use these tools effectively. I say more slowly rather than slowly because I think we have to act fast to get those policies in place. Because I think a lot of the problems with AI occur when people don't know whether it's okay to use it, don't know what they should do, shouldn't do. And yes, pause. Quieten the noise. Step back from it. Reflect. What do you want to achieve with AI? Don't let the AI drive you. You drive the AI. Prepare and partner. Work together. There are lots of people in this room, lots of people speaking here today who are here to help. So work with them. And I hope that you've enjoyed that whistle-stop tour. I hope that you'll find the slides and the adjoined resources useful afterwards. Thank you so much for listening to me. I think I am just finishing on time. We did start a bit late. I could do a few questions, but I don't want to shorten Chris's session, so up to you.
I think we might have time for just one question, if there is a question.
I was really interested in the visual you used for the perfect storm, and I think from an ethical and a sustainability perspective, and when you mentioned the advent of AI being used for commercial purposes, just the fact that data control centers use up so much water, and I suppose us being responsible in our use of AI, and also, the very fact that it's better not to be polite using AI because it uses up, I don't know how many bottles of water to say please and thank you. So yeah, that was my point, I suppose.
That's a really important point, and you're so right. Of course, if we look at the billions being invested by those tech companies. A lot of it is in those data centers that use huge amounts of energy. And that's because the processing power, 3 ingredients in my perfect storm, takes huge amounts of energy, takes huge amounts of water to cool all of those systems. So you're making a really important part. It's the whole world that's part of this, the environment. One last thing before I go, and then I will shut up and hand over to Chris, is I'm doing a little poll on LinkedIn at the moment. I'd love you to please go and vote. You will find yesterday, today, tomorrow, 2 stories on each day. One written by AI, one written by me. I want you to guess which one's which. And then on Thursday, I'm going to explore the results and reveal some things about AI that you probably already know, but I hope you'll find interesting. Thanks so much for listening to me.
Thank you, Rose.